dialed in to Byron Velvick's Fish Tales. Real talk, real tactics, and the stories that make it all worthwhile. Here's Byron.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Fish Tales. I am here with a friend of mine from a long time ago. He and I have fished the Bassmaster tournament trail for quite a while. Both retired now from fishing Bassmaster, but he lives in Del Rio, Texas, and Lake Amistad, real special to me because we're both in the same place. I'm here in San Antonio, Bernie, raising my daughter, but as you guys saw in a previous episode with Rick Lund, I had the interruption of having to go take her to volleyball right in the middle of the show. And so I've learned, and thank you very much, Denny Brauer, for coming on during the day while my daughter's in school so we can knock these podcasts out. And Denny, welcome to Fish Tales, man. It's really cool to have you.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Byron.
It's so neat to be able to get you on the show. We've gone back a long way, and ultimately the show is just about, kind of visiting with you and talking about the beginning. I didn't know this till I did my research. You were a bricklayer in Nebraska. That's how it all started for Denny Brauer. Was you were laying bricks in ice cold Nebraska?
Oh God, was it cold? Yeah, I went to college one year and kind of ran out of money and enthusiasm and went to work for an uncle of mine in the masonry industry. We were doing big commercial jobs in Lincoln, Nebraska back then. God, you'd keep busy during the warmer months, and then winter'd roll around and you'd be unemployed half the time. And it was not a bad way to make a living, but it was kind of a dead end street. And once I got kind of involved in bass fishing and saw that there was a possibility of maybe doing it for a living, I had to give it a try.
Were you in, was it Sawyer, Nebraska or Sawyer, Nebraska?
Seward, Nebraska, which is about 30 miles west of Lincoln, the capital.
So the rumor I heard, and I did my research and talked to our friend Ken Duke, because he's the guru of all information. He's so good at this stuff. He's like, ask Denny about being in the basement, learning to pitch and flip with coffee cans all around the basement and giving yourself a bunch of hard targets to perfect. In the winter, when there was nothing else to do because there's no bricks to lay, you honed your skill of the short cast.
Yeah, I wished I could pitch as good now as I did back then. You had a lot of time to really get good at it. And I'd put a target behind one of my wife's plants or whatever to really make it kind of challenging and more natural-like and ruin the wallpaper in the house and everything else.
Wait, did you ruin a bunch of Shirley's plants too? Was Shirley a little upset because you were
Of course.
you're destroying her plants by the short pitch and the pulling it over on everything?
Well, you had to bring them in wintertime or they're going to freeze.
So what inspired you, Denny? I mean, everybody thinks of you as a pitching, flipping guy. How did that start? Where did that come from? Like, what was it? D. Thomas? I mean, what motivated you to pick up the long rod and start doing the damage with the short pitches and flips?
Yeah, we had a chain of lakes that were fairly new back in those days in Nebraska called the Salt Valley Chain of Lakes. And like any new lake, they got a lot of cover in 'em, a lot of timber, etc. And they didn't have vegetation, but they did have a lot of timber. And I read about the technique. There was no way you could buy a rod back then. So a buddy of mine, we got a couple of, he was building rods, old Fenwick blanks and things like that. And he got a couple, I think they were probably saltwater type rods, and cut them down. And we made a couple of flipping sticks, and we went out to the area lake and drove right in the middle of a bunch of the heaviest cover we could find, shut the engine off and waited about 15 minutes and just started to drop a jig around in the cover. And lo and behold, I caught a 2-pounder right off the bat. And,
Wait. You drove the boat into the cover? Like you drove the boat up in it and then just went up to the...
Yeah.
No.
Right in. We wanted to get their attention. So that's kind of how it got started. But the lakes were very conducive for that technique, and being in a bass club and that, I was able to have quite a bit of success with the flipping and pitching technique. Not many people were doing it, obviously. So,
what year was that?
Oh gosh, it had been back in the mid 70s.
Yeah, because Rick Rick Clunn talked about this. He said that there were no rods. To your point, it was the long. Gary Klein was doing this. He was also using, and Rick had to go get saltwater rods because everything was 6 foot, 6'6" with a pistol grip.
Yeah, there were no long rods like what we have nowadays. And he's absolutely right. Most of our rods were the old loose speed sticks or whatever with a pistol grip and, heavy and really not all that great. But you just kind of had to improvise and make do.
Yeah. Yeah. And you did really well with it. So when did the transition? You start off by just pitching and flipping. And it must have been really cool back then because you were basically fishing a fish that hadn't seen a lure. Those fish in that tight cover were not getting pressured at all. Everybody was casting up to the targets, throwing spinnerbaits and crankbaits, worms, whatever, but nobody was penetrating the deep stuff early on.
No, they really weren't, man. A lot of what I was doing back then was straight flipping, where you get real close to the brush piles, falling down trees and things like that, and just dipping it in all them hard to reach places. And as time went on and the rods got a little bit better, you could expand into the pitching and really you could reach about any target then.
Yeah. That must have been a neat time. It's kind of like when the swim baits came out, nobody was throwing swim baits. You had the whole thing to yourself. And I liken that to what you must have experienced when you were one of who else besides you that you knew were doing it as much as you were?
I didn't know anybody back then. I'm up in Nebraska, just a few bass club guys, and none of them really did it. So it was kind of you kind of owned that type of cover, put it that way.
So when did you, like, you were fishing bass clubs in Nebraska? Did you come to a point where you said, I want to make a living at this and I'm going to move down to Missouri? Or where does the transition comes when you leave Nebraska and quit laying bricks to go fish?
Well, there wasn't even a bass club in my hometown, so I started a bass club, got a bunch of guys together, and we got a few cases of beer and met in one guy before the night was over. We had this bass club, and that's kind of how that started. And then we joined the Bass Federation and started to fish the Federation tournaments. And I got me a real bass boat. I bought my first Ranger back then and went to the state tournament that qualified you for the National Bass Federation, and I won it. So I got to go to the uh, Federation tournament on Lake Eufaula, and I think that might have been in 1978, something like that. And actually had big bass one day, and that's about all I did. And then I won the Nebraska Federation tournament again shortly after that and got to go back. And that was on Grand Lake. That's when Ken Cook won to kind of start his career, if you remember.
Of
And
course. Yeah.
I think I finished fifth in that one. And that just kind of gave me a little encouragement. Maybe someday try one of the national events. And sure enough, the next spring they were coming to Lake of the Ozarks with an April tournament. And that was only like a 6-hour drive from where I lived. And I figured, well, might as well give it a shot. And I went down there and I finished, if I will remember right, finished 20th and won me $1,000. So I was pretty pumped about that. And kind of met Forrest and Nina Woods and was in the right place at the right time. They asked me if I was interested in fishing anymore, and they'd be happy to sponsor me. And that's kind of how that started.
So you were running a Ranger boat before you met Forrest and Nina. You were just a Ranger boat guy and you met the owner of the company at a tournament. How cool is that?
Exactly. And I don't know if I'd have continued on without that opportunity, but that first entry fee was about it. I was kind of treat after that.
So you're still in Nebraska and you go to Lake of the Ozarks. Is that when you decided to move? I mean, did you say, man, I can't be living this far up? And did you have kids at the time? You and Shirley already had a family and you decided I'm packing everybody up and I'm going bass fishing and I'm headed south.
Yeah, we had Chad, and of course he was young then, but I went ahead and fished the next tournament, and it was on Toledo Bend, and I think I finished like 235th or something. I decided maybe I wasn't quite cracked up for that, but somehow I hung in there, and we decided if I was going to do it for a living, we didn't have that much to lose back then. Let's make the move. And so we moved to Lake of the Ozarks where I could start guiding and spend more time on the water. and also experience a lot of different types of fishing. Just kind of try to improve what I was doing. Nebraska was a little limited in that regards because about 4 months of the year it was iced up and you couldn't even go out there. So that's kind of when we made the move.
Clun actually talked about this as well. I guess for you guys early in the days, guiding was such an important part of your career because you were spending so much time on the water when you weren't fishing a tournament. You were becoming a very good person at just locating fish and finding fish everywhere you went because you had to put your clients on fish. That's like a big part of what was your life, early life on the tour, wasn't it?
It really was. If you look back on the history of the sport, most of the guys that had success, especially in the growing period of the sport, had been fishing guides. They'd spent all that time on the water. Larry Nixon, Tommy Martin, it just goes on and on and on. And there's nothing that can replace time on the water, as you well know. There were times I would be booked 30 straight days, and I didn't really want to go out there, but I had to go out there to make ends meet, so to speak. Uh, and I enjoyed it. You met a lot of cool people. I remember I had one neurosurgeon out of St. Louis, and he hired me probably 12, 15 times a year. He had a condominium there on Lake of the Ozarks. And I finally asked him, I said, as much as you come down here, why don't you just get your own boat and fish? And he goes, I come down here, you know where the fish are at. We go out, we catch fish. I can tip you a couple $100 and be way ahead. That didn't even cover the insurance on my boat. And I thought about that a while. And I thought, God, maybe I should have become a neurosurgeon. But
That's pretty smart because you tell people buying a boat and then having to go out and find the fish, just hire a guide.
oh
These
yeah,
guides are dialed in, like you're dialed in. He doesn't have to think about nothing. Just jump in the boat and catch fish because you're going to go right to where they're at.
yeah, you had some great clients like that, and uh, that's what made it enjoyable. Occasionally, you'd have something going on in the boat that you'd have to listen to a divorce taking place or a corporate firing, or you never knew what you were going to get with a new client. But I had some really good repeat clients, and that made it very enjoyable. And the fact that Truman Lake was brand new, along with Lake of the Ozarks side by side, and I was guiding out of both places. It was incredible fishing.
Yeah, that's I love doing this podcast because I hear so much from so many of you guys that is and I kind of regurgitate the brilliance of what I heard when I had Scott Martin on the show. He was talking about nowadays these kids have not just a bunch of guide trips, they're fishing a lot more tournaments than we ever did. We didn't have so many tournaments to fish, and these guys are getting a new pedigree because they're fishing under pressure. They're fishing tournaments all the time. They have 30, 40, 50 tournaments a year to fish. We never had such a thing. So we were guiding, looking for fish, locating fish, and it wasn't the same as when you fish a lot of tournaments, you learn how to fish more competitively day in and day out. You learn how to time manage your day. And I think that's an interesting point that we never had those opportunities because there were so few tournaments back in the day, as you well know, when it was just Bassmaster and a few other events.
Yeah, there really were only 6 events
Mhm.
at plus Bassmasters Classic. So that was a deal where you had to do something else to supplement your income. Obviously, the tournaments didn't pay that great starting out. I know I fished my first one in 1980, and then I won my first one in 1984. And I think that first one in 1980 maybe paid $5,000 and a $5,000 Ranger boat haul. And when I won in '84, that was right when it started to be televised, so the purses really started to go up. I think it was about 28,000 then for that first win, and of course, once TV got involved, things started to skyrocket pretty good.
So wait. The first Bassmaster Classic that you fished in 1980, first place of the classic was a boat and 5 grand?
No, not the classic, just one of the
Oh,
regular.
the regular
Yeah,
tournaments.
there was what they called invitationals, and there
Mhm.
was 6 of those, and then the classic, so
Okay. Yeah, back when Ray Scott was basically still hosting them. And I
yeah.
remember you'd
Not
win a
sure what
boat.
the first classic that I fished paid, but it wasn't a whole lot. That was around when Stanley Mitchell won.
When did you win your Bassmaster Classic?
98.
98. That was your first one.
Yep. Yeah, I
Wow. And
had a lot of disappointments along the road.
a lot of bad ones, a lot of things you wishes you could take back.
Oh, no, I had a lot of, top 10 finishes, a couple of seconds and third, fourth, fifth, everything but first. And it got kind of to where I almost resented the tournament at times because I knew that I was going to get asked that question by the media. Is this going to be the year you're going to win? Well, hell, I don't know. If I catch enough fish, it will be. And so when I finally won, it was kind of nice. I didn't have to answer that crap anymore.
Well, you were qualifying for so many. Like I think I asked you, how many Bassmaster Classics have you qualified for? And it was just almost automatic for you in those early years, wasn't it? 80s and 90s, you were fishing them almost every single year they had them.
Yeah, I think I qualified for 21 classics, but
Gosh.
it was it was disappointing in some ways because you had fish on that would have won, and for some reason it just wasn't meant to be. And finally, at the end of your career, you've only won one, and you probably should have won four or five. So
Oh.
disappointing, but I don't think I would have felt my career was fulfilled if I hadn't at least won one.
Right, right. Well, I tell people that, I've won 2 US Opens, and it's the other ones that you danced around, the thirds, the fourths, the fifths, the near misses, the coming in one fish short on the last day and finding out everybody else didn't do very well, and all you need was that fifth fish, and you were thinking you had to catch so much more because the weights were so high the first 2 days, and the last day, whether it's a 3 or 4 day event, you miss it by a keeper, and you're like, "I could have just, any keeper on the way home from the way up in the river would have got me another U.S. Open title." And nobody realizes how many times you dance with more opportunities than what it shows in the record books. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think as competitors, we always look back on what could have been rather than what we did do. And I think we're guilty at times of maybe not appreciating the success as much as we dwell on the failure. And
Yep.
I always tried to, after a tournament, just put it to sleep whether I wanted or finish last and look forward to the next event. Because I only always felt that I was only as good as my next event. And I
Hmm.
think that attitude, it keeps you kind of grounded and really pushing forward. And I think it's almost a requirement because you could really dwell on one of them tournaments like what you're talking about
Yep.
and there and go, what if, what if, what if? And that's just part of the goofy game we play. There's so many things we think we control, but we don't.
That's so true. My gosh. And one thing that people don't realize about you that I do, because I fished against you and around you, and we've been in the same area, you're not a one stick wonder. You're not just picking up that flip and stick pitching to the stick. You are extremely versatile. And a lot of your tournament success has been on other techniques besides what everybody labels you for. It's not like if Denny Brauer has them, there must be a hot flip bite going on or pitch bite going on.
Well, that's true. I mean, there's so many tournaments you're not set up right for that technique or whatever technique that might be your favorite. It's always nice when you got a strength that you can fall back on when it really gets right for it. But no, you're absolutely right. I mean, I look back and I've won tournaments spinnerbait and crankbait and topwater, a little bit of everything. But from a marketing standpoint, it was kind of neat to be the flip and jig guy because you could take that and really run with it.
Oh my God, the Strike King black and blue 3/8 ounce Denny Brauer jig. It's like, you know what? I mean, people had confidence because you basically gave people so much confidence in that technique and that style of fishing and even that bait because they were like, well, if it's good enough for Denny, it's good enough for me. Like I'm gonna throw it. Like you had basically almost quantified if you were going to pick up a pitching rod or a flip stick, you kind of knew you were going to throw exactly what Denny was telling you to throw. But my question, which I'm dying to hear, what do you think what's the mistake most people make when they do try to emulate Denny Brauer and go pitching and flip? And if you were to, I know you had bass class, you're schooled by Denny Brauer. What did you see people doing wrong with that particular technique that maybe watching Fishtails they can learn from?
I think a lot of it's boat control. You watch the average fisherman, and not their boat control just totally sucks. They're really not thinking ahead whether they need to be fishing into the current or into the wind, or it may be an area where you need to use the wind to push you through quietly. They may be backwash on and on, making too much noise, banging around the boat. You're not set up right, trolling motor wise, equipment wise, to where you can be stealthy. So there's a lot of mistakes from that end of things. And there's a lot of mistakes, hook setting. It goes on and on. It's setting yourself up equipment wise. It's a total package. You put the whole package together and you can be successful.
You had a cool show, and was it Schooled by Denny Brauer or was it Bass Class with Denny Brauer? Because I remember it, and it was awesome what you had going on. Where was that playing, and what was that whole show about?
Well, the first show we had was Bass Class, and that was on ESPN for, I want to say we did that like 6 years. And then we did Schooled by Denny Brauer. That was on ESPN. And I don't know, we did that for 2 to 4 years, something like that. And then after that, my son and I did Bass Battles.
It was Schooled by Denny Brauer and Bass Class, both of which you'd watch people in a boat and do exactly what we're talking about here, which is seeing there where they could have done something a little better, a little different, where they were making some mistakes, and you were kind of a tutor, if you will.
Yeah, in the school show, that's exactly how it was done. We'd send a camera crew out with a guy, and we'd film, and then we'd kind of analyze it on a set, and I would go out and duplicate it and try to show him what he did wrong on the water.
Yep. Yeah. What a neat concept. Do you miss it? Do you miss doing television?
I enjoyed it. I really did. And I worked with a great bunch of people there at JM, and had a lot of fun doing it. It added a little more pressure to your schedule, obviously, because back then I was fishing bass, I was fishing FLW, and I was filming. So between them three, we'd continually be on the road. But I think it also kept me on the water a lot more,
Mhm.
and a good thing.
Are you fishing anything now? I mean, I know sometimes we see each other at at Amistad for whenever there's actually a bite that's happening, and God bless Amistad. But are you fishing any tournaments now? Last thing we fished together was Major League Fishing. Like I retired when I had to come home and raise my daughter and become a full-time dad. The last thing I was doing was Major League Fishing and Bassmaster, and I had already been finished up with FLW. Was that your last hurrah too? Was MLF?
Yeah, pretty much. I fished after I retired. I'd fish an occasional Toyota, I think they were called, those type of events. And a buddy of mine, I fished some of the Texas team trail stuff a little while, and but now I'm just, if it's here on the lake, I'll fish it. If I got to travel, not so much.
Well, I'm gonna put you on the spot because I've told so many people this story. You may have caught the lake record at Amistad, and I'm not gonna even fresh. I am not gonna sit there and ruin the story by telling it to these viewers right here, but you caught the biggest bass you've ever seen, and I'm gonna leave it at that and let you go. So tell me that story. Tell us, Fishtails audience, that story.
Well, it was a story that was never supposed to get out to start with.
Well, the fishing's no one's coming there now.
We were actually filming down on Falcon. My son and I was filming one of our shows, and then I was filming another show called Striking Pro Team Journal. And in the one show, we had a 12 and 11 and a half, and the other one we had a 12 and a quarter that my son caught. So I'd been around some pretty good fish, and I drove home from that filming, and we had, I think it was called an Everstart tournament, going to be here
Right?
on back then.
Yep.
I think that's what they called them anyway. And I had like a week and a half before it was going to start, and there was no off limits. And so I'm out on the lake on Amistad fishing, and I'm fishing this hydrilla flat. And there's a little hump in the middle of the hydrilla where it came up to about 20 feet. And I'd caught a 5 pounder there like a week before I'd left to go film, and never made another cast. And the wind's blowing like 30. And I'm blowing across that flat. And I thought, I ought to maybe make one cast over there to see if that was just a fluke. And so I'm throwing a 3/4 ounce striking football jig, and I throw it over there. and it gets about 3/4 of the way down, the line just jumps. And I thought, this is probably stupid, but I'm going to set the hook. And I did. And I thought, well, this is about an 8-pound fish. And I knew it was a decent fish, but it finally come up and they couldn't jump. All they could do is do the old head shake. And I go, this is bigger than those 12-pounders we just caught. And I got kind of serious in a hurry over that. And of course, there's nothing for the fish to get in other than to get back into the hydrilla. And I put him around. I'm blowing. We probably end up 75 yards by the time I got him in the boat from where I hooked him. But he'd come up 3 times. The third time I finally got him and got him in the boat. And I'm going, this didn't even look real. It looked like California bass that you see pictures of. They're as deep as they are long. And I unhooked him. I put him in the live well, got the live wells going, and I sat down, and I immediately had a migraine headache. So I took a couple of Advil. I mean, I am jacked. I mean, I am totally wrecked at this point. And I'm going, I don't know what this thing weighs. And I go, I got to find out. So I called the guy that built my house. Well, he doesn't answer his phone. And so I wait a little bit, and I call him again. He still don't answer his phone. And I go, damn, I need to weigh him. So I got one of them column right scales in the boat, and I get it out, and all it'll do is blink when I hang him on that. I get to look at it. Well, it only went to 15 pounds. And I go, oh, doesn't weigh 15 pounds. So I got a buddy of mine from Strike King had given me one of them registered boga grips. And so I dig it out and I hang him on that. Well, he bottomed out the 15 pounds on it. And I go, well, he's over 15 pounds. But now I don't know how much over 15 pounds. And I put him back in the live well, and I tried calling the builder again. And I get thinking, if I drag him around town, try to get this fish weighed, I'm going to kill him. And it became a really weird deal. The fish didn't have a blemish on him. It just became between me and the fish. It didn't have anything to do with records or anything else. And then the greed kind of started to creep in a little bit. And I got to thinking, that tournament's a week away. If I take him back over to that hump and let him go and catch him during that tournament, that fish is going to be really famous.
Oh.
I eased back over to that hump and watched him swim back down there, and probably had a terrible tournament because I spent too much time fishing that. But I never saw it again. So, and now that hump is high and dry. I mean,
Right.
never again.
And so you're alone. You're alone in the boat. This is like the old man in the sea. When you told me this story, we were at my hotel, the Amistad Lake Resort, and you quietly told me that. And at the time, I didn't share it with anybody because I knew at that time that, people were still showing up and we're trying to keep the bite quiet. And you don't want people knowing that Denny Brauer caught a 15, 16, 17 pounder out there, because then every Sherrilunker chaser will come out. But I remember thinking you were out there by yourself looking at that fish, and you had to make that decision to let that fish go in, like you said, maybe in hopes of catching it during the actual competition, which is really cool.
Yeah, I wasn't even smart enough to take a picture of the thing, which is probably good. But later on that day, my builder calls me and he goes, "What do you need?" And I got, nothing. And he goes, "What'd you catch?" I go, "Need to know this." And he kept working on me. And I go, "Well, you're not going to believe it anyway, so I'm just going to tell you, but don't tell anybody else." And so I told him that I caught one that bottomed the scale out on 2 15-pound scales. And sure enough, it didn't take him long. He was probably on the phone calling everybody he knew, and the word got out in a hurry. But it was a moment I'll never ever forget. Put it that way.
You know what's cool about that, Denny, and I have the same experience with the biggest smallmouth of my life, is that your biggest bass of your life that you actually caught, you have no idea what it weighed, and I'm the same way with my smallmouth at the Columbia River. It was giant. I just said 2 foot long by 2 foot wide. That's all I could explain. And it was during practice for the Bassmaster event, when they were out west on the Columbia River in Washington, and I catch this giant smallmouth. It looked like it had the barnacle spots on it. It has the old liver spots that the old big smallmouth do. And you knew it was just this 7, maybe 8, maybe 9, bigger than 6, 4, 5, 6 pound smallmouth. I've caught them, but this was bigger than anything I'd ever seen in the world of smallmouth. And then when I get back to the when I get back to the ramp, I'm telling Skeet and those guys about it's during practice. So I let it go, hoping I'd catch it again, just like you. And I tell Skeet and the guys, and they're like, "Did you catch it on the Oregon side or the Washington side?" I go, "Well, I caught it on the Oregon side." They go, "That was the state record." Because the state record's only 6 pounds or something. And I'm like, "Oh no, this was like 7 or 8 pounds on the Columbia River." And they're like, "You just caught and let go of the state record." So of course, Bassmaster heard about it and they had me do a story on it after the tournament. But it's cool that we both have record bass that we have no idea what they weighed.
I've never caught anything close to that particular fish. I think I've had 3 13s over the years. One of them came on Falcon, and one of them came on a private lake. And but I've had I don't know how many 12-pound, 12-ounce bass here on this lake, but I can't catch a 13 here on this lake. But I had that one.
Wow. So have you ever put up a share lunker? Did you ever submit a share lunker? I never have.
No,
What's your read on the lake? I mean, I know this is the viewers, Lake Amistad. You think those fish at Amistad are still there. They're just living deep.
I,
That's what you think they're still there. And you even saw a big school of them one time. I mean, you don't think they're gone as much as the fishing is horrible. It's just that do you really think they relocated and they can live happily ever after in 50, 60, 70, 80 foot of water?
yeah, this is a very unique lake, very challenging lake because of that. Very seldom do you see a thermocline develop anywhere on it. Once in a while, maybe up the Devils. So, I mean, they can live. I've caught them over 100 foot deep here. That's not unusual at all. All species live down there. The stripers, catfish, whatever. They're going to be where the groceries are at. And when you see schools of bluegill a quarter mile long that are down there at 50 feet, they're not up there on the bank. They're where them bluegill are at. They're where them gizzard shad are at, where the threadfin shad. They're where the bait's at. And until that bait comes up and stays up, they're going to stay down there where they're real hard to catch because they're very nomadic when they're like that, following the bait, following the groceries. And now that we're getting some vegetation back in the lake, if they come up this spring to spawn and the bait comes up there and starts staying in that cover, you're going to see some of the bigger fish come up and stay. Right now, when we get lucky and catch a few big ones, they just follow the little pot of bait up, and we happen to be in the right place at the right time before they slid back down into 100 some foot of water. And most of the big fish we've been catching, your boat may be in 100 feet and you may be catching them out of 20, 25, but they're close to that deep water where they can go back out there and roam around again.
Isn't that's what's fascinating about Amistad for people that are watching the show that on television it was world famous, the stuff people saw on ESPN. And when we went there, and you could go sight fishing down in the springtime and just pick and choose your 5s and 6s and 7s and 8s and 9s on beds. And even now they must be spawning really deep. I mean, they must be spawning, so because even during the spring you don't see what we used to see on that lake. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy now that you don't see those fish spawning even in shallow water at all. They must spawn deep as well. Well, we got a segment on the show, getting off of Amistad, because you and I could talk about it forever, but it's our lake, and a lot of viewers. This is a worldwide show. It's crazy that people off Fishtails now are messaging me from Australia and South Africa, and they're watching it in Japan and everywhere else. It's really kind of cool. So I know it's not relevant to talk about our little pond that we live on, but the segment that I'm going to lead up to, and I have a segment called "The One That Got Away," and you remember Jim Bitter when he loses that fish and he fumbles it, and Tim Tucker's filming him, and he loses the Bassmaster Classic when he has the winning fish, which we're going to show right here. But Denny Brauer, what is for you the one thing that got away? It doesn't need to be a fish. Sounds like he caught the one fish that was amazing. Sports contract, sponsor, you name it. What's the one that got away for Denny Brauer?
The memory still haunts him. He lost by 2 ounces.
Oh boy, I could probably give you 2 examples. There's probably hundreds of examples, but 2 of them that haunt me to this day. We had a tournament. I don't know if you remember that Bass was doing called Bass and Race.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, well, we had an event in Illinois, and it was on 3 different lakes. And then the finals was on Wren Lake, where once you finish the fishing, that's where they do the boat racing. And the fishing part of it was weighted a little bit, and then the other half of the point value came from the racing, boat race, going around an obstacle course, the buoys. Well, I won the fishing part. Actually, Chad was second in that, and so I'm sitting pretty good. First place is 251,000.
Oh
Second
my gosh.
second place is zero. Yeah, you know
It's
where
called
I'm
winner
going.
take all. $250,000 for first, and that's it.
Yeah, and like I say, I won the fishing part of it. Got a plaque. Whoopee! So we do the racing part, and you get 2 runs, and they're timed runs. And I'm kind of mediocre on my first run, so I know I'm going to have to, in order to make sure I don't get beat, come in pretty hot on the second run. And I get around the first buoy fine, and I got to get around this next buoy, and the buoys were crappy. It was typical, let's save some dollars on the buoy deal, like throwing a catfish jug out there. And in the glare, I lost the buoy. And I ended up hitting the buoy and got a 5-second penalty, and there went $251,000.
That cost you hitting the buoy? I mean, clipping a buoy cost you $250,000.
Yeah, so that that's one of them examples that you'd like a do-over, maybe, or maybe you wished you hadn't even fished. But so
Yeah,
that'll be a long, long time. And then the other one was, you remember the Bush shootout?
yep.
We had that on, I think it was Lake Grapevine or something there in Dallas. And Bush was a major sponsor of mine, had been for years. And I caught a big bag the first day, and I think it got down to the final 2 on the second day. I don't remember the exact format, but it was between me and Ish. And I caught like a 12-incher, and that's all I got in my bag. I couldn't get these fish to bite. I'm catching all kinds of 11-inch fish, but I couldn't get a big bite. And I got like 5 minutes left, and I come into the weigh-in area, and there's a row of tires for a windbreak out there. And I took a jig and I flipped it right into one of them tires, and I jerk a 4-pounder up out of there, swing him into the boat, and I go in. I got them 2 fish. And it's just the 2 boats, and I'm watching Ish bag his fish. And I see him put 2 of them in the bag, and I go, well, my 4-pounder in the lead, I got this. I'm not going to take a chance on that 12-incher burning me. So I tossed him back in. I go up there, and I lose by, he had a third one in there that I didn't see. And I lose the thing by a couple of ounces, $100,000. Once again, second place paid 0.
Oh no! And you let go what might have been a keeper fish.
Oh.
Like you actually let go.
So I threw $100,000 back in and gave Ish a nice birthday present.
Oh my God, Denny, those are 2 great ones that got away.
2 horrible stories that I still wake up in the middle of the night kicking my.
Hey, do I need to let you go because we're losing battery power? I don't know how you're looking on your phone. Tell me what you see over there.
It's getting into the red zone, put it that way.
Hey, would you mind coming back? Because I don't want to take up too much of your phone juice. I don't want to lose you mid-story, but I mean, it's a short one, but I'd love to have you back on if you don't mind coming back. I got so much more to talk to you about, but heck, we can make it a 2-parter if you want to come back sometime.
Absolutely, not a problem at all.
And maybe you get that iPad working. I know you guys are working on the iPad, and I'm still, all the technical stuff we're working on. Hey, I'm actually going to drive out there next week. I might come by and say hi. Will you guys be in town next week?
We will be.
I'm going to come out there, check on the house. So I might just swing by and say hi to you. And thank you so much for being on the show. I'll send you a copy of this as well when it airs. And if there's anything else, is there anything you want to promote? Is there anything you got going on? Anything you want to tell the massive audience that's building up here?
No, not really. I'm just, still business as usual, still working for most of the same sponsors I had my whole career, kind of keeping forward and doing a lot of work with Striking and Lose. I work with Mercury and, of course, Ranger. I've been with them like 900 years or whatever it is. I've never had another bass boat other than them. and Seaguar Fishing Line, still working with them folks. But so they haven't all got smart and fired me yet, but they're probably working on it.
Oh no, you're a legend, dude. I go to the Bassmaster Classics and I still take pictures of your name, and I'm like, dude, are you coming into the Classic? You're not going to the Classic, are you?
God, that's just too far away.
Yeah, I know. I'm taking my daughter there. Great story, Denny. It's spring break. My daughter doesn't have school. So I said, hey, Livingston Lures, you're going to be working for Livingston Lures. You're going to be in the booth. Her and her friend are going to be ringing up sales and helping with lures and handing out podcast flyers. And I'm putting my daughter to work at the Bassmaster Classic in Knoxville. But once again, I'm going to take a picture of Denny Brauer banner hanging up there because it's really cool to see that. And I'll actually see you next week. So, hey, thanks for everything, Denny, man. I really appreciate our friendship. It's been a long one, and I think thanks for taking the time to come on Fish Tales, Denny. It means the world to me.
Well, anytime I can help, you just call.
We'll do this again. We'll come back around after the first of the year, but I'll see you next week in Del Rio. Maybe we'll go fishing for an hour if you can find me a big one like that, 15-pounder. You know where it's at.
Well, I can point to where it used to be.
Show it to me. Way up there where the coyote's walking. You see where that coyote's at? That's where I lost that lake record.
Yeah,
Thanks, Denny. We're out, man. I appreciate you.
Fish Tales has been brought to you by Livingston Lures. Learn more at livingstonlures.com. Fish Tales is also supported by these fine sponsors: Trica Fishing, Mercury Outboards, and Canis Boats.